Russia's answer to bridge the gap in a highly connected but fractured world. Connectivity through barriers in geography and policy. From St. Petersburg, World Insight with Jian Wei ponders the answers. Balanced views, straightforward interviews, go beyond the headlines.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of our program World Insight, coming to you from the site of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum in Russia. I'm Tian Wei. Russia President Vladimir Putin's speech has once again put Russia back onto the map of world news headlines. As a country that has gone through the ups and downs of its economy over the past few decades and one still under sanction, what is Russia's way of coming out of the current state of challenge? We're going to talk to some of the people in the know. The organizer of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, the president of the New Development Bank, and one of the most outspoken voices of Russia on the international stage. But first, this.
Building a trust economy. This is the key theme of the 22nd St. Petersburg International Economic Forum 2018. Russian President Vladimir Putin warned that a combination of sanctions, trade barriers, and a lack of trust among countries and businesses could lead to an unprecedented global crisis.
Today there is a new variant of protectionism, the use of obviously invented pretexts, references to national security. What for? For suppressing competitors or extortion of concessions.
Putin said that a spiral of sanctions and barriers is just beginning and is affecting a growing number of countries and companies. The Russian leader added that today we need not trade wars or even trade truces, but trade peace. And the two sides exchanged views on international issues, including the U.S. withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal. Macron said Europe must develop more efficient mechanisms to protect its economic interests. The two presidents vowed to work together and consolidate their efforts to seek solutions in all international areas. China also sent delegations to the forum, and earlier Chinese Vice President Wang Qishan met with Putin in St. Petersburg. The two leaders agreed to further boost cooperation for the benefit of both countries and the world. Being powered by the Belt and Road Initiative and the Eurasian Economic Union, cooperation between Russia and China is deepening. Since its establishment, the forum has gradually developed into a platform for discussion of key issues in the world economy, regional integration, the development of new industrial and technological sectors, as well as addressing global challenges facing Russia and other nations. With Donald Trump canceling the summit with the DPRK, international relations are getting more unpredictable. China, Russia, and Europe intend to use this platform to better cooperate for global development.
Russian President Vladimir Putin's words not only put Russia back onto the map of world headlines, but also showing his utmost support to the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. Among those who are proud of this, of course, is the organizer of the forum. I've been talking to Dmitry Mikhailov, who is the deputy director of the Ross Congress Foundation, the one that has been organizing the forum for the past 10 years. Let's listen in. Mr. Mikhailov, the Deputy Director of the Ross Congress, thank you so much for being with us.
Pleasure for me to
You should feel at home. This is the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. That's the thing that you have been organizing over the years.
Yes, it's been a while since we first started to organize St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. This time it's, if I'm not mistaken, for Ross Congress Foundation, it's the 11th year when we organized the St. Petersburg, and for St. Petersburg International Economic Forum is the 22nd year.
Wow, impressive. But let me ask you, Mr. Mikhailov, about the image of Russia. There seems to be a very big different picture about Russia in the West, so-called. And Russia also aspires to gain its glories as it once maintained over the decades. Where do you think is Russia now in search for its new identity?
Well, Russia now, as it has always been, is between the West and the East. And while organizing the St. Petersburg Forum, we have always emphasized this fact that we are a bridge, we're at the crossroad, and that's why we work to unite and to welcome at our forum, at our platform, both businessmen from Europe and the United States, and we have a lot of participants from Asia. And we have guest countries each year, and we have welcomed heads of states and governments, not only from European countries, but a lot from Asian countries. This year we welcomed 2 heads of states from France and from Japan. The goal of St. Petersburg Forum to unite these 2 continents and to show that Russia is a country which is, in between the Western world and the Eastern world.
But one has to admit that Russia is in a critical point, in your relations with the West, whether it's about Syria, whether it's about Crimea, and whether it is about some of the economic and political issues. So what do you think, sir? St. Petersburg Economic Forum be able to provide much support for Russia to get the message right?
Well, we have a lot of business participants coming to St. Petersburg Forum, and in spite of some political tensions, business always come to our forum. And the number of participants from European countries, even from the United States, is large. And business wants to cooperate, and business listens to the president's speech each year and tries to get signals what approach Russia will have to the business community, to economic cooperation. Because, well, Syria is one thing, but business is another thing. And we know that a lot of businessmen from Europe are striving to cooperate with Russia.
How different, though? Syria is one thing, business is another thing. But how different? When you have sanctions are still going on.
Yeah, we have sanctions going on, but we survive, and we strengthen cooperation with our traditional partners. I know that, well, for example, German business is not very happy about strengthening of sanctions, and German business wants to cooperate. We cooperate a lot of Italian companies which come to Russian market, sometimes to substitute German companies, which is not good for German business, and German business wants to come back, and of course we strengthen relationships with Asian countries, with China, also with Latin American countries. Well, business always finds ways to make profit and to create good and productive relationships, regardless of what politicians do.
What about France and Japan, the 2 countries that are being featured this time?
How to build trust, how to overcome political tensions, and how to overcome these tendencies which bring countries apart. Because all this, it disrupts trade, international trade, and it's not good for global GDP. So the purpose of these economic platforms is to bring business back together. And when we invite political leaders, we expect them to speak about about positive things, about how to build trust again, how to overcome these political tensions.
We also have the new technologies, which is likely to play a big part in the discussion here. And that is also transforming our world these days. But the question is, how will the 2 things work together? You got, once again, the geopolitical issues not resolved. You also have the complexity, or sometimes contributions too, by the new technologies and its transformation of the world. It seems that the 2 are happening parallel at the same time.
Yes, there are 2 are happening parallel, and we signed the agreement with between the Minister of Industry and Trade of Russia and between the Minister of Energy and Industry of United Arab Emirates, with participation of United Nations Industrial Development Organization. It's about holding the global manufacturing and industrialization summit in Russia next year in 2019 under the aegis of UNIDO and in cooperation with United Arab Emirates. They created this platform last year. This summit was held first in Abu Dhabi in 2017. In 2019 we'll have the second summit in Russia, in Yekaterinburg, an industrial center of Russia, and it's about how industry can contribute to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by promoting fourth industrial revolution technologies and etc. So this is answering your question about industries, about new technologies. We also create platforms with Congress and with our government to unite manufacturers and to discuss how new technologies can contribute to the global goals.
Well, it all sounds beautiful, but as you may know, contracts may not necessarily going to solve everything, particularly some of the bigger issues.
Yes.
So now the question has come to us that when you have economic and trade ties, not anymore will be the absolute basis for future relationship. How will the complexity of geopolitics come into being, and how will that impact on the economic and trade relationship? That is a question I guess your forum have to deal with.
Yes.
I see a long sigh.
Well, it's a difficult question.
Yeah.
I think the future will show how the situation evolves, but we hope that economic interests will help us overcome the political tensions. For example, how to help less developed countries to grow up and to be more prosperous. It's an economic question. And only by uniting political will we can do that. If we, on the other side, concentrate on trade wars, it's not good it's not good for anybody.
Not good for anybody in the long term. Before we go about China-Russia, China Vice President Mr. Wang Qishan is here for this year's Economic Forum in St. Petersburg. Meanwhile, you also have a very impressive Chinese delegation. So how will this platform serve as a real platform for China and Russia? Concrete cooperation, not just talk, but really concrete cooperation, sir.
Through signing agreements, through having, very personal negotiations, through doing the interviews as well, because you take interviews from some business figures and political figures of Russia, and you send messages to your countries. I think all this contributes to very practical cooperation. It's like, the cooperation takes place throughout the year.
Yes.
But this is a very concentrated point here, 2 days when people can give messages, have very personal negotiations, because they're all here at the same time.
Yes.
And it's very important, sign agreements. More than 450 agreements were signed last year at the St. Petersburg Forum. We are working to give participants an opportunity to talk together. We have a lot of business networking platforms, negotiation areas here. So it's, I think it's all contributes to it.
I think you guys work very hard, particularly with Russia these days attracting ever more attention. Well, thank you so much, sir, for being with us and also talk to us on CGTN. Thank you, sir.
It was a pleasure for me. Thank you for inviting me.
All the best. Thank you. Slow economic structural reform and the rounds of sanctions against Russia have been challenging the country's economy. Now Russia is trying to find its way out by strengthening its cooperation with other emerging economies. That, at least, is the observation of the president of the new development bank. He shared his views with me in an exclusive interview with CGTN on the sideline of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. These economic forums is really about multilateralism.
Indeed.
But as you may know, Mr. President, that idea is being challenged, particularly recently. As the head of a multilateral development bank, what do you make of that?
I would say multilateralism and open trade, all these are being challenged. I think that's why it becomes even more necessary and important that countries which were emerging, what I call as countries of the South, try to stand together and try to do things for themselves. And I think that is the reason why, frankly, the two new development banks were set up. to make a statement in a way and to prove to ourselves that we can start doing things on our own. And in a way, there is a new idea of multilateralism that then comes about because of this, with different governance standards.
But doing our own things is different from doing our own things well, efficiently, and also attracting enormous attention and creating a model. Where is it for New Development Bank?
Well, it's a very interesting question. As a banker, I would break it into three parts first. One is, have you got the capital in? It is the financial capital.
Yeah, we got that already.
We got that already.
Yeah.
We are running ahead of schedule. Second, have you got the people capital, the human capital in? We got that, and there is a very rich vein or load of capital in our member countries, and of course beyond that in the world if you want. But the member countries themselves provide this rich load of human capital. Third is technology as a capital, and clearly today we can leverage technology of a different order than existed 10, 20, 30, 40 years back, and run very lean organizations, very light organizations in terms of cost of technology, and yet deliver all that you want to deliver.
Right.
So three capitals: financial capital, human capital, and technology capital. If you leverage, I think that's what epitomizes what we do.
That is on your agenda, but how is your doing your agenda for now, and how fast will that become a model for the world to have an alternative? That's the question, isn't it?
Indeed. I would only say that in our case, it's on our agenda and it is being implemented. So it is visible that this is done. When will it be seen is a very interesting question.
Yes.
And the answer is also simple. For that, you need to create size. You need to demonstrate that this is not just a question of lending $500 million or $1 billion. Well, today, in 2.5 years, I can say that as of this month end, we have approved loans of $5 billion.
Yes.
But the credibility point will come in when you say that, well, this model has now delivered $25 billion or $50 billion and catalyzed another $500 billion. Then you become relevant.
Yes.
I think in that context, I look at this current role that we are all playing out at the NDB, in a way pioneering role, is to create a strong foundation for this new type of institution and start building the superstructure.
Yes.
It is our colleagues who will follow, who will then take the structure up.
And of course, you are laying up that foundation for now. Yes, and you also offer green bonds, things like that, in order to send a message to the market about what you are, and also about the kind of model that you are encouraging right now.
Indeed. So we did the green bond issue in China.
Yes.
Again, the government was very supportive so early in the age, when we did not even have a balance sheet. They said that, why don't you look at issuing a bond? We did issue a bond very successfully. Chinese institutions are borrowing in renminbi. Very interesting follow-on, which I must say. This month, we have proposals from South Africa to actually raise money in rand. So we are now working on how to raise money in South Africa and rand. This meeting in St. Petersburg is throwing up where clients are saying we want to raise money in rubles. So we will do that. And we've been always saying, India, there is a market for rupee. So suddenly what we said 2 years back, that we want to lend in local currency becomes feasible. And at that point of time, again, the external world did not buy it. They said, oh, is it? But today, I think it's becoming feasible.
Why is that?
That's because I think as far as the nations are concerned, they find the merit of doing business in local currency. Because we have seen the volatility in the hard currencies over the last 2 years, both in exchange rate and interest rate. And the clients don't want to be stuck with that volatility, so they want local currency funding. And I'm sure the next move we will see as we go along is what I call members of the 5 BRICS nations themselves, the central banks, coming together to offer swap arrangements. So that we can swap each other's currencies for trade and not rely on a currency or a set of currencies where we then bear the brunt of exchange fluctuations consequent to somebody else's actions. None of our actions, somebody else's action, but we bear the cost.
There are different reports about New Development Bank being approached by different ways of funding chemical companies or raw material steel companies, energy companies. The question is, what is going to be the standard for new development bank to make your choice?
Our focus is infrastructure and will remain infrastructure. So if you are looking at a corporate entity, we will look at their infrastructure needs to make, let us say, the climate challenges less, to improve what they are doing in terms of the climate area, and these sort of things, not directly in what they are producing, to make the environment more livable. Now, we are also doing some interesting things. In a sense, when we started activity, the leaders gave a signal to me in UFA when we started 3 years back. For the first year, why don't you look at green projects, that is renewable energy projects. We did that. But we are finding it fascinating as to what opportunities are being provided. And I will just use China as an example. And these are what I call very bold statements, which I am very happy to carry. So China is saying, for example, that waterways have been contaminated because of past accelerated growth. We now want to repair those. We say we will provide the funding for that. I think this has two messages. How going forward can we avoid waterways being contaminated, and if they are, what sort of repair can be done? That is also know-how which we can take across to our other member countries, and we will fund it. So we think that that is absolutely sustainable activity that's going on. We are finding that a lot of villages in our member countries need attention. Only the urban centers have been getting attention, whether it is water, it is clean drinking water, sanitary situation in terms of disposal of effluent and stuff like that, and of course rural roads.
How you build a relationship with the leaders of the countries that are supporting the new development bank? What is the nature of this relationship? Can you pick up the phone and talk to the president of Russia or president of China, talk about the new initiative that you want to have with the new development bank? How are you working with the finance ministers of these countries? How does the mechanism work?
The process is really board driven. I think in our case, in a way, since the board members come from each of the countries and are very high ranking people in particularly the finance ministries, I think you seed the germ of an idea in their mind, and that grows. And I use demonstration as a key. That is, some country has done something and that has merit, then you use that as a key. And you use occasions like our annual meeting to showcase things to others. So this year again in Shanghai, we will have the Shanghai government, municipal government presenting things they've done. In fact, last year in India, I had a team from Shanghai government come and present how the Shanghai development took place. What were the key infrastructure efforts they put in to transform Shanghai. And I can say that almost all the development planning ministries in India and various section heads were all extremely interested and curious to take it forward. So you excite interest in variety of ways. If necessary, finally, you push at the level that you mentioned.
Now I see the tricks of operation behind the scenes. Having said that, though, one more question about this. China and Russia recently, over the past few months, all have an update of the government according to the country's political time cycles. So how are you familiarize yourself, the new development bank as well, with these new officials coming into the position, and also to interact with them about some of the ideas you have and visions that you have?
Yeah, I think in China, for example, we will certainly meet with the Minister of Finance in a few days' time, and I will update him on what we are doing and take in his inputs as they were. In Russia, in terms of the finance ministry and our dealing ministries, there is continuity, but I'll also meet with him to understand from him if there is any new approach that they would like to share with us. In India, it's a continuous process, so at this point of time. And South Africa, again, this weekend, I look forward to meeting my old friend, Minister Nene, who's come back as finance minister, to understand from him what are the priorities that the new president has set. So actually in three countries, in a way, we have had, I would say, an update as it were, and we work with. And we will look with great interest to what is evolving in Brazil, because they have elections down the year.
And also you have regional office likely in Brazil.
Yes, we will open our regional office in Brazil by the year end. And we are learning from our experience in South Africa.
Yeah.
The regional office provides you a great, I would say, feedback point.
Yeah.
And also the reverse way, and allows you to do what is required to be done to, I would say, generate a project
Yeah.
and then detail it out. It provides you the front end.
Mr. President, you see the key members of the New Development Bank are also becoming key members of many of the regional and international platforms. Shanghai Cooperation Organization, for example, which is likely to hold their annual summit very soon in early June. How do you see the three countries, China, Russia, and India, who are now members of SCO, going to interact on so many different kinds of forums and platforms vis-a-vis that of the New Development Bank?
Yeah, see, as of now, our platform is slightly different. But I take the point that you're making, and as far as we are concerned, what we need to do is understand, what our leadership wants in the context of the SCO. I think that process is going on. We have not yet understood this. And once we understand that, we will then take the next steps that might be required in our context. But frankly, I think we are in a learning stage on that to understand from our leaders. As you said, three countries are involved there.
Yes.
And what is the relationship that is evolving.
Yeah, and New Development Bank, by the way, Mr. President, is dealing with the infrastructure building funding and many of the other development projects. But you see regional organizations like ICO or some of the others also taking on new roles, not just about security anymore, not just about anti-terrorism anymore, but economic and trade links as well, financial included. So how are you going to have more competitors?
Yeah, my experience has been that things happen very quickly in certain areas. So when funding is in place, things happen. When funding is not in place, it's very difficult. Now, again, I would think that even within the BRICS, NDB could move forward because there was a clear funding agenda and
Exactly.
the rest of it requires much more hard work. They are doing that, and I'm sure they will see the fruits as we go by. So in the other groupings, other than free trade, where things move fast in certain contexts, but again that is being revisited in a different context. The rest of the places, I think it takes a little time to develop. So in any case, our objective is to, in anything that happens, to be a catalyst. So I would try to drive NDB to a role where even if there is activity that happens at other ends, how can we be a catalyst in that activity? Because it is for the common good.
You're watching a special program of World Insight coming from the site of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. I'm Tian Wei. Earlier, in my exclusive interview with the president of the New Development Bank, he talked about Russia's way of developing its relationship with the emerging economies as a way to come out of the current challenge. That has been shared by Vladimir Yakunin, one of the most outspoken voices on the international stage for Russia over the past few years. Dr. Vladimir Yakunin is the co-founder of the Dialogue of Civilizations Research Institute of Russia and has been the head of one of the most well-known state-owned companies of this country. Of course, he has over the years developed a very close relationship with the leadership of Russia. China and the U.S., whether involved in a trade war. Well, both sides try to avoid it with the latest statement. But what do you make of the discussion, if not debate, right now?
I will refer to the latest report of Rome Club. I'm not an buyer of this organization, but even they acknowledged that the existing model of some system, economic system, which we're again calling capitalism, expired, and they declaring that the new economic model should appear. From this point of view, I suppose one should consider all these elements of the trade war, declaration of the United States of America, attempts to get out of some agreement, etc. that is, to me, that is the reflection that the model is crippled. That, you know, if somebody waits, that Americans will stay idle aside, letting China to get #1 position in geoeconomy or geopolitics, you know, that is, to my mind, not particularly true. And China made great efforts and has a plan of sustainable development. I am avoiding the word growth, development. And for that, you have population, you have, you know, structure, state structure, political structure, and it helped.
Are you saying all of this because Russia is not necessarily on good terms with the United States? Russia is still under further sanctions of the United States?
Listen, it has nothing to do with the personal feelings. That is just objective reflections of what we are doing in Dialogue of Civilization Research Institute.
Talking about the Belt and Road Initiative or talking about the Eurasian Economic Union, people see the value of these ideas. But it is not the first time, I'm sure, you answered that question. How to implement them well, efficiently and sufficiently. Also sustainable. That is the biggest issue.
I completely agree with you, because we have lots of beautiful and very attractive ideas. The questions are how to implement all those ideas and with what instruments. From this point of view, I suppose we should not omit the value of the idea of Euro-Asian project, because, you know, it is, in my opinion, possibly one of the reflections of the fact that unipolar world is not sustainable.
I mean, what is the solution that we are asking some practical questions? For example, if you build railroads in the Far East or the Far West, you have to have enough people that are using these railroads. And you have to have enough businesses that is going to take advantage of these infrastructure projects. But so far, that is still a big question mark. So with a lot of investment put into those, whether energy, whether infrastructure, how sustainable will they be? How economically viable will they be?
May I use the example of your own country? You used to have the policy, one family, one child. Then you introduced the policy, one family, two kids. Now, enjoy, develop your families. So the population in one place may be diminishing, in other places is growing. That is the advantage of China. On the other side, with the idea of one belt, one road, or belt and road, as you call it now, it is essential. Just imagine if we create the project of the railway structure going to the Bering Strait, through the tunnel, Alaska, to the United States of America. That will be, to my mind, obvious, you know, advantage for both, for China, for Russia, and even for the United States of America.
It sounds beautiful, but you know, ideologically, politically, it's not possible. That's why I'm asking this question. Ideas are wonderful, but how to implement these ideas?
The only ideology, that is the ideology, if it is different, that means enemy. That is the ideology which prevents. Otherwise, if we are talking business-wise, it will be advantage for the United States of America, for China, for Russia. But, you know, imperialistic approach, when, you know, if it is not me, the upper hand of everything, you know, that should be doomed, that is the ideology.
That I understand. But the other layer really is about the economics of these projects.
Absolutely.
They have to earn money. And the companies, they have to have profits. What are your specific suggestions?
My specific suggestion is that if we are talking about Euro-Asian collaboration, that should be some kind of institute, whether corporation, whether something like that, you know, multinational, with a very particular idea and demand targets, what should be created, how to collaborate, you know, the project of One Belt, One Road initiative, Trans-Siberian, interest of Kazakhstan, interest of further India, you know, Pakistan, Iran, etc., and to try to balance it. But this organization should be independent in terms of taking decisions. Because if the business is responsible for the result, but it is state who every moment is giving, you know, the orders, what should be done, what should not be done, who, to whom, you know, to be friends, to whom not to be friends, then it is not business.
Dr. Yakunin, I understand that even you personally is so-called uncertain sanction list of the United States and some of the other countries such as Australia. I wonder, what is it like for you, I mean, on a personal basis? Once you can travel freely around the world, and now you could only go to limited numbers of these countries. Once you could interact with business people from all over the world in their hometowns, and now they have to come over here and visit you. To you, what is the nature of this challenge?
Firstly, the nature of sanctions is absolutely abnormal. I'm not talking about myself. You know, I am in a better position because I am sanctioned only by United States and Australia. Everywhere else I can go, and it is fine. And you know, with the sanctions, judging by my relations with my former partners and actual partners, I can say that, you know, the respect is not getting less, to say it like that. So we are communicating, we are discussing. Now Europeans, they themselves are declaring that, listen, we should tackle our fate in our own hands. But it is quite a time after the sanctioning, after, you know, knocking towards, you know, some country which is imposing those sanctions. The country is deciding whether you're a good person, whether you're a bad person, you know. And that is absurd. It is not possible. We remember once in the Soviet Union when somebody considered that everything should be controlled, everything should be manipulated, and everything should be counted only by the state. It was wrong. So I suppose in the global perspective, it is also a big mistake on the part of the United States or somebody in the United States of America that they consider they can give orders to everyone, you know, from, you know, far east towards, you know, far north and far south. It is not possible.
I mean, you went through a lot, Dr. Yakunin. You once served in the KGB. Actually quite impressive if you look at some of your records over the years. Later, you also become the head of state-owned enterprises. You even have a lot of close interactions with who become now President Putin over the years. You went through the Cold War, you went through the ups and downs of former Soviet Union. You are experiencing right now a different stage of development for Russia. Want to put itself onto the world map, but at the same time, in a way, has to deal with some of the challenges coming from the West. What do you think would be the ultimate solution and the way of looking at things Russia should adopt, and you yourself should adopt?
Listen, I am far from being in the position of giving any advices on this political level. I can share with you only my own experience. And I should say that we should not underestimate the importance of society being involved in producing political decisions. We should not underestimate the importance of collaboration between different societies. Specifically, we are talking about the younger generation. And we should not underestimate the fact that, listen, it is not possible to trade in all what you possess as a personality.
Right.
We all have this heritage, historical heritage, and to expect that if I start to be, you know, to introduce myself to be absolutely westernized person, that will make any good for me or any good for my partners, that will be illusion.
Dr. Yakunin, it is always a pleasure to see you here at the St. Petersburg and certainly at the forum. What a pleasure to see you once again. Thank you so
very
much
much
for being with
Thank
us.
you, thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
With that, we're coming to the end of this special program of World Insight, coming to you from the site of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. On behalf of my team here in St. Petersburg and back in Beijing, I'm Tian Wei. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.